Right now, some major developments in the race to become Georgia's next governor. We'll explain why one big name is getting in while another is crossing party lines. Also, engines roaring, intersections shut down in seconds, and reckless stunts clogging roadways. Find out why police say this is just more than a traffic nuisance. And Georgia's Latino community making some big moves during this Hispanic Heritage Month, and the spotlight just got a bit brighter. We'll show you who's making the list of the most influential voices shaping our state. This is The Take. Hello, everyone. This is The Take. I'm Jonathan Martin. Glad to be joining you today in for Chesley McNeil. If you have not watched before, you know we always go beyond the headlines and look at the why and the stories impacting your community. Experts share what they know, and of course, we try to also have a little fun, something to make you smile as well. Well, starting off this morning, opening statements are expected today in one trial surrounding the death of 8-year-old Secoria Turner. You may remember she was shot and killed in July of 2020 while riding in the backseat of a Jeep driven by her mother in Southwest Atlanta. The following year, charges including felony murder, malice murder, and gang-related charges were filed against Julian Conley and the co-defendant here, Jerrion McKinney. Earlier this month, McKinney was sentenced to 40 years with 20 to serve behind bars and the rest presumably on probation or some form of supervised release. Conley's trial is starting this week. Prosecutors maintain he fired the fatal shot that killed Secoria, so the trial is set to start again today and last about 2 weeks. We're going to break down this trial this morning with what we can expect in Julian Conley's trial with noted defense lawyer Daryl Cohen. He was also a former assistant district attorney for Fulton County. Daryl, so good to have you back here. Thank you for joining us. We all know that this was a case that so many in Atlanta and really beyond Atlanta remember. It got national headlines since the shooting happened 5 years ago. Opening statements starting any moment this morning in court. What do we expect to happen?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Second of all, what we expect is the possibility of a lot of fireworks, that is courtroom fireworks, verbal fireworks. What we're looking at is a man who's charged with murder, and if he is convicted, he's going to spend either most of the rest of his life in prison if he gets sentenced to life with the possibility of parole. If he is convicted and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, then he would spend the rest of his life in prison. So all of that's really, really important. This is a case where there were armed people in a protest. It's a tragedy waiting to happen, and yes, it happened, and it was terrible. So the defense will likely say by cross-examination, they don't have to put on any evidence at all. It's up to the state to prove the case. So the state will have to prove beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt that Julian Conley is the person who fired the shot. That's simple. It's not that simple, unfortunately, because there were so many people there. So many people that were armed. And because there were others that were armed, the defense may very well be through cross-examination and innuendo. It wasn't me. I don't know who it was. It was somebody, obviously, but it wasn't me.
Yeah, you speak to that point. This all happened during a very tense time in the city. Does this case raise larger questions, though, about how cities may handle some of these armed civilian groups, especially in protest zones?
Well, it's really difficult. We need city ordinances that are enforced that prevent people from bringing weapons to a protest zone, especially when there are numerous people around who are armed, because as I mentioned earlier, it's a tragedy waiting to happen. And in this case, it happened. It'll happen again if careful we're not.
Mm-hmm. You know, so many people remember this case. They remember the name Secoria Turner because this was an 8-year-old girl killed on July 4th. How do you expect prosecutors to leverage that, leverage the attention as well? And how can the defense counter that without coming off as insensitive?
It's difficult. As soon as a child is injured, or in this case, murdered, you take that and wave it like the American flag in front of the jury. And when you have an 8-year-old child who's murdered, who no longer has the ability to do anything for herself because she's dead, the prosecution will push that heavily, trying not to push it as far as the jury's concerned, but in reality, actually pushing it. And as the defense will have to use their cross-examine, as kids say, use your words. They'll use their words to try and show it wasn't Julian Conley. It was someone, obviously. It wasn't him. But we'll have to wait and see what the evidence actually comes to the jury, what is able to come out to the jury in front of the court.
You know, Daryl, earlier this month, and we mentioned that the other defendant in this case, Jerrion McKinney, entered what's called an Alford plea. A lot of people may not know what that is. So explain what that is and how this might impact the prosecution's case now against Conley.
Well, he received a 40-year sentence, 20 of which to serve, and he may or may not be eligible for parole. In this instance, Alford versus North Carolina is a case that came down when there was a person in North Carolina that said, I'm not guilty, I'm not guilty. But the prosecution has enough, in my opinion and in my lawyer's opinion, to convict me. And as a result of that, I don't want to take a chance in getting the maximum penalty. And so I'm going to plead guilty, not because I'm guilty, but because there's overwhelming evidence that in my and my lawyer's opinion would be enough to convict me and convict me of the worst charge. That's a possibility here. And if he were to plead guilty, in all likelihood, he would get a lesser sentence other than life. He would probably plead guilty, if the court would accept it, if the DA's office offers it, to voluntary manslaughter, which would give him anywhere from 1 to 20 years on one count.
So real quick, so Conley could, hear all the testimony, hear all the evidence, and then decide later on that he wants to take that plea. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that depends. The further into the trial it gets, the less likely it is that there's going to be a compromise, that is, a plea of guilty to something. But yes, it is always possible. He has the right to try and enter a plea. And of course, his lawyer would be armed with the fact that my client will enter a plea to, as an example, voluntary manslaughter. And that way the state doesn't have to worry about an appeal. It's done, it's over, and he'll be sentenced, and the case will be put away in the annals of court history.
Yeah, this is a high-profile case. I know our crews will be in the courtroom following this. I know you will be as well. Daryl Cohen, we always appreciate your perspective. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Have a great day.
You too. And you're watching The Take. We'll be right back. Welcome back. President Trump is visiting the UK today for his second state visit, greeted with some pomp as he stays at Windsor Castle. That's where we find NBC's Alice Barr, who is traveling with the president. Good morning to you, Alice. So we know the president arrived not too long ago. He certainly seems to be getting the royal treatment from King Charles III.
He is, and we know that that's something that President Trump enjoys. He enjoys the pageantry, the pomp, the circumstance. He's getting it in full doses here. There is a private lunch ongoing right now between the President, the First Lady, and the royal family, who all greeted him earlier, the President and First Lady, when they landed inside the castle walls. And that's an important term, because everything that is going on, all of these ceremonial events, a carriage ride, the military processions, it's all happening within the secure perimeter of Windsor, and that really points to the heightened level of security and the incredible security precautions that are in place here. But as far as, the display that is ongoing, this is the largest military contingent for a visiting foreign leader that the UK has seen in recent memory, and it all points to, I think, the efforts that the royal family is going to roll out the red carpet for the president. Again, has not happened before that there's been a full second state visit for an American president. Typically, you might get a tea with the monarch, but seeing this entire treatment for President Trump points to the relationship and the efforts that are ongoing to keep those ties between the U.S. and the UK strong.
Certainly something to see. So, Alice, this visit also coming during a time of deep divisions on both sides of the Atlantic. So how is that perhaps factoring into all the events happening?
Yeah, I've been speaking to some of the folks who are here who wanted to at least be able to see the helicopters come and land when we saw that and be around, at least in the environment of while the state visit is ongoing. And we've spoken to some of them about there was some major anti-immigrant protests in London over the weekend, more than 100,000 people turning out for that. So there's a lot of that kind of sentiment and division that is ongoing here. In fact, Elon Musk called into that event and talked about having revolutionary government change in the UK. Of course, there's a lot of that kind of discussion ongoing in the U.S. as well. And then there's the way that the Epstein case has kind of reared its head here in the U.K. because the British Prime Minister, UK Prime Minister, in fact, fired the British ambassador to the U.S. after it was revealed that he had stronger ties to Epstein than were previously known. And Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, has faced some criticism for a bit of a delay in that firing and not doing it right up front. Obviously, we know that that scandal has been roiling the U.S. and the Trump administration. And of course, there's also the assassination of Charlie Kirk that I've heard people talking about here as well. And I think that also is part of the reason that we've seen an even higher level of security for this state visit.
That's right. And you know, Alice, you also mentioned Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He's set to meet with President Trump. Do we know what they may talk about?
Yeah, trade is going to be really high on the agenda. President Trump said that the prime minister wanted to refine the U.S.-UK trade deal during their visit, and that the president said he was open to that. So that'll be discussed. And then something that we've heard from protesters here speaking out about is the escalating wars in Gaza and in Ukraine. And I think particularly Ukraine is likely to be very top of mind. We know how important that is to leaders here on this side of the pond and to many of our strongest allies. So I anticipate there'll be a lot of discussion about that. Just before taking off, President Trump made another comment indicating that he thought Ukrainian President Zelensky should be the one to step up and reach some kind of deal to end the war that, of course, Russia started. So I think a push for solidarity with Ukraine is also on the docket here.
All right, Alice Barr traveling with the president there at Windsor Castle. Thank you so much. We'll be checking back with you later. Thank you. We have much more coming up this morning for you on The Take, so stay right here. We'll be right back. Well, Atlanta has now cut the ribbon on its first ever city-owned grocery store. Leaders call Azalea Fresh Market a lifeline for downtown, but it also raises a question. Can it really change the game for families who've struggled to find affordable, healthy options? Here to help us answer that question is Dr. Eloisa Clementich, CEO of Invest Atlanta. Great to have you with us this morning. So I want to ask you this first off. How important is it for downtown Atlanta to have this grocery store?
The last grocery store in downtown Atlanta was in 2005. So I would say very important to the success and the vibrancy of the city.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think about all of those students perhaps that live around Georgia State, who go to Georgia State, and some of these communities that we've even covered that have been rising right around downtown. A lot of people moving in closer to the city. So was that what made this, you think, the right moment to really go all in on the project? More people kind of going this way?
Yes, there are over 5,000 units within a 1 mile radius that will be online within the next 5 years. And so when you bring that amount of people to downtown, they need a place that a reliable place to buy fresh food and vegetables. And this will be their option. If not, it's sort of part of an important recipe to bring everything you need in downtown. So if you're going to be the 24-hour city, you have to be able to accommodate not only the business workers that we know, the students, but the residents that will be coming to this part of the city.
Yeah, just for everyone. Okay, so I know you've been inside the new grocery store. I haven't gotten to check it out yet, but for people who haven't seen inside, what will they see when they walk in?
An amazing array of fresh food that are Georgia grown, and I have to tell you, the peaches were amazing. I actually went back several times to go get some. They're also going to be regular food for you to purchase your grocery store, but I think to accommodate who's around us, and you mentioned Georgia State students at the tune of almost 50,000 students, is there's going to be light snacks so that you could come in, grab your coffee, grab a sandwich, grab a pizza, and then head off to your next class, for example. So it really is a store that's looked at its market, what is around and where is the demand, and it's accommodating that. And for those of you who love sushi, sushi will be available with Dope Coffee, which is a local entrepreneur, on the second floor.
All right, I love my sushi. All right, so I'll have to check it out. Okay, so you guys aren't just a financial backer of the project at Invest Atlanta, but really the catalyst, pulling money together, private grocers, community design, and I liked how you said some of these local businesses will be a part of this as well.
Yeah, so for us to be successful, for these businesses to be successful, they have to be sustainable. So not only are we helping them open, but now that they're open, how do you assure sustainability is distribution, workforce? These are all key things that will make or break a grocery store. And so we're working very closely, and the Independent Grocers Association, to try to ensure that these type of small community grocers continue to be successful.
This is kind of some new territory for the city of Atlanta. What do you say to those people? Maybe there are people out there who kind of worry about taxpayer money going toward a city-owned grocery store.
I'll tell you that it is important for the success of your city to have access to fresh fruit and vegetables. From your students who have to have food to be able to fuel themselves to go to school, to entrepreneurs, to business, to regular individuals, you have to have access to fresh food at all price points. And so it's an important component to ensure that a city is vibrant. And so what we've said is, let's do a public-private partnership. So we're not the only ones at the table. We have a local entrepreneur, has 12 other stores, and we're saying, let's help you be successful so that we can ensure the community at large can benefit.
Yeah, awesome. Like I said, I know a lot of those students around GSU will certainly love having a grocery store right in their midst. Dr. Eloisa Clementich, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We have plenty more in store for you this morning on The Take, so stay right here. All right, time to talk some Georgia politics. Changing day by day. Breaking news today in the race for Georgia Governor Brad Raffensperger has now tossed his hat into the ring. The current Secretary of State now vowing to stand for Georgia no matter what. That's what he says. Raffensperger first gained national attention for defending the integrity of Georgia's 2020 election results when President Donald Trump pressed him to find enough votes to overturn the results. In his announcement, Raffensperger vowed to work with Trump on job creation, deporting those in the country unlawfully, and banning what he calls woke ideology in schools.
President Donald Trump shared his thoughts, calling Duncan a total loser and telling him good riddance.
This attack from Donald Trump is a badge of honor for me. It means I'm doing something right. I'm Geoff Duncan.
Meantime, the guy you see right here, former Lieutenant Governor Geoff Duncan, officially entering the race yesterday, but not as a Republican. In a bit of a political mix-up and stunner, Duncan announced that he is running as a Democrat now, pitching himself as one who can unite Democrats, independents, and what he calls disillusioned Republicans, while acknowledging shifts in his own personal views. So here to explain everything that's going on, this maneuver, is Democratic strategist and frequent panelist on the Georgia Vote, Val Sabak. Welcome. Always good to have you. Okay, so it's really
glad to be here.
Yeah, and it's heating up, so a lot to talk about this morning. We just heard that breaking news, Raffensperger, yes, he is officially running for governor. How much does his entry into the race shake things up in the GOP side?
Look, it'll shake things up for sure. I mean, I think you have a two-man race right now a three-man race with the Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger. It'll be interesting to see, he is a well-known money force. It'll be interesting to see where the donors end up going. And it'll be interesting to see where their primary electorate ends up going. I think he had faced some problems recently with the state Republican Party. And so I think it'll be interesting to see if their primary electorate has the appetite for him as governor.
Yeah, and Raffensperger is a name that we heard a lot in recent years. He was the one, of course, as we said, who stood up to President Trump. But his announcement also touched on what he called woke ideology in Georgia schools. So how tricky might it be for him now to balance all the facets of the state's Republican Party and these different views?
Yeah, I think that's going to be that's always the challenge in the primary, right? Is, you have to play to your base, excite them to get out of the primary, and then you kind of come together in the general. So I think his time in office, he's done a pretty good job of, being a steady hand. He's done a good job of, being the voice of reason. It'll be interesting to see if that will translate in the gubernatorial electorate.
All right, so let's switch now to Geoff Duncan. He made his big announcement yesterday around this time. How unusual is it to see someone switch a party here in Georgia and decide he's now running as a Democrat?
Yeah, I mean, the party switching typically happens the other way around, where a Democrat becomes a Republican. So it was refreshing to see somebody who had a front seat to the Trump administration, how they were functioning in 2018, 2020, and then say, you know what, this party's no longer speaking for me. I've changed my mind. I'm going to run as a Democrat. So it'll be interesting to see.
You know, and to that point, how hard do you think it might be for Duncan to convince Democratic voters that he really is a Democrat, that his conversion is genuine? Because we heard from some of his competitors already in the race on the Democratic side, basically saying that he lost support from Republicans, so he had no choice but to switch over.
Right. I mean, look, I think that's part of the campaign strategy, right, is for these candidates to get out, talk to the voters. I think what former Lieutenant Governor Duncan can do is have a conversation with these voters to say, listen, this is where I was. This is where I saw the party heading. I started to have questions. These were my concerns. This is why I'm a Democrat now. I think having and detailing that conversion, I think will help to his credibility and talk about, you know, his conversion being genuine. I think explaining that, laying it all out on the table. I think voters are hungry for something genuine. I think they're hungry for, you know, somebody who's going to stand up and fight for them. So if he can make that case, I think that the voters will listen.
But do you think some of those voters, especially Democratic voters, may be able to get past his record when it comes to things like abortion and Medicaid? And he's now saying, I'm a Democrat?
I mean, I think that's the responsibility of the other Democratic candidates, right? To say, like, look, like, this is not a real conversion. This is something, you know, out of convenience or, you know, opportunity. I think some of the voters will have questions. It's going to be up to who's going to be able to have the more convincing argument. All
right, so this field is getting pretty crowded. We have Keisha Lance Bottoms, Michael Thurman, Jason Estevez, among a couple others. Now Geoff Duncan. Who at this point is really out front? I know we still have months and months to go, but who's now leading the way, you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's a I don't know that there's one clear person in the lead right now. I think they're all doing a good job. They're all raising money. They're all getting out and talking to voters. I think, you know, having such a good number of good candidates is a sign of a healthy party and a healthy system. So I don't know that there's a clear front runner right now. It'll be interesting to see how the months leading up to qualifying will shape up.
Yeah, and you know, Val, every day it seems like we're getting new information on Georgia politics. So we're going to be checking back with you a lot this season, I'm sure. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
We appreciate you as always. All right, well, Val will be, of course, on the panel this Sunday morning at 11 for another episode of the Georgia Vote with our very own Zach Merchant and Faith Jesse. Catch that right here on 11Alive Plus as well. You're watching The Take. We've got much more coming up this Wednesday. Stay right here. All right, welcome back, everyone. Yesterday, the Georgia Supreme Court made it official. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis will not be leading the high-profile election interference case against President Donald Trump. In a narrow 4-3 ruling, the justices declined to hear her appeal, leaving her disqualification in place over her past relationship with Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade. It is a ruling which drew strong reaction from President Trump.
Now, she should be prosecuted. What she did to people, forget about me, what Fani Willis did to innocent people, patriots that love our country, what she did to them by indicting them and destroying them, she should be put in jail. She's a criminal.
All right, so the case now shifts to a new prosecutor, raising some new questions about whether and how the cases and the charge will move forward. Let's take a deep dive into this ruling with Professor Jonathan Nash from Emory University School of Law. Welcome to you. Okay, so this has been big talk the last 24 hours or so. How unusual is it for a prosecutor to be disqualified in a case, especially one of this magnitude?
Well, cases of this magnitude are pretty uncommon to begin with, but yes, it is not common. It does happen. There are reasons that prosecutors can be taken off a case. Sometimes a prosecutor from the get-go will remove herself from a case to avoid something like this. But it is uncommon. And as you say, it's a big magnitude case. The eyes of the country are on this, not just Georgia.
Yeah, a lot of people watching this and have been for months now. So how does this ruling now from the Georgia Supreme Court potentially complicate the balance between law and politics, especially when you have a sitting president as the key defendant?
Well, you already had a complicated balancing between law and politics. There's no doubt about it, just given the nature of the case, even when Fani Willis was on the case. And now you have a situation where she no longer can handle the case. So the Georgia Prosecutors Council, Peter Skandalakis, is the handling this. He's going to decide sort of which prosecutor, if any, is going to take over the case. So the issue is going to be, which prosecutor, if you're looking for someone who wants to take something like this on at this stage. And you have to recognize, if you're walking into this, no matter what you do, if you decide to drop the case, if you decide to pursue the case further, you're going to get, again, the eyes of the country on you, and a lot of people will be upset with you no matter what you choose to do.
Yeah.
It's fraught.
All right, so Jonathan, we know the decision was a 4-3 split. Not everyone agreed on this. What does that closer margin tell us about how divided the state's highest court was on this legal question of the appearance of impropriety?
Well, the court only decided really whether it would hear the case. So it's when justices opine in this setting, they're really deciding, they're setting forth their opinion on whether the case should be heard, not necessarily how the case should come out. That said, it's definitely a close vote. There were a couple of justices also who didn't participate, one of whom was on the Court of Appeals panel below that decided that Fani Willis should be recused, but he actually did vote the other way there. So it's definitely a divided state Supreme Court, but the bottom line is the 4-3 vote carries, and the Supreme Court will not hear the case, and that really shouldn't have an impact on any aspect of the case going forward.
Okay. Well, speaking of moving forward, the next step is to appoint a new prosecutor, someone outside of Fulton County. How quickly could that process move forward? And do you expect a prosecutor to even want to take this case?
Well, like I said earlier, I'm not sure. Even, again, when the case was proceeding under Fani Willis, there were issues. You now have additional issues. Donald Trump is back in the White House, which raises questions about whether you can move forward now with him. It's possible you could drop him. A new prosecutor could drop him and proceed against the remaining defendants. But that's an issue. The Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, has also issued rulings on presidential immunity, which I think the president, if he stays in the case, would eventually litigate and say that the Georgia case could not be pursued against him. So the new prosecutor would have to consider whether you want to move forward with President Trump, whether you drop him from the case, whether it's worth proceeding with the case at all, given all these considerations. So I'll just say, I said before, it's fraught, and I'm not sure you'll find a prosecutor who wants to step up and move forward with this at this point. There's a lot of moving parts here, and it isn't clear that ultimate success will await you at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know.
Professor Jonathan Nash, we always appreciate your perspective. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, well, street racing and dangerous takeovers are making a noisy comeback in Brookhaven. Look at this video, just how wild it was. Blocking intersections, firing off fireworks, and putting innocent drivers at risk. Police are cracking down with arrests and impounds, but the problem is starting to feel like a throwback to the COVID shutdown days. A lot of us remember that. Let's bring in our guy, the Gridlock Guy, Doug Turnbull, with what's fueling the resurgence. Doug, good to see you as well. You working hard as always. So why are we seeing this problem come back now? And I guess the bigger question, why Brookhaven?
Well, that's a great question, is why Brookhaven. I'm not exactly sure, because I believe the intersection in the video you had, which was shared to us by Brookhaven Police Department, is at Ashford Deputy and Harts Mill. And while Ashford Deputy is a big road, Harts Mill's really not. That's a neighborhood that people cut through to get between 285 and Peachtree Boulevard there. And there you see the road signs of that. Yeah, I mean, big enough intersection, but look at all the markings left in there. Our Marissa Sarback was on scene a couple days after this happened and did some great reporting on it. I don't know why now, Jonathan, because the laws in both the state and then a lot of the local municipalities, including Brookhaven, have beefed up. Now the state can confiscate cars. There are bigger fines, and there are sanctions for people that participate. And I'm not talking about just the drivers that are drifting or street racing. We're talking about people that are just in that audience, and as you saw, they're shooting fireworks. If they determine you're not just passing by but egging it on or part of the blockage, they could also give you a ticket too.
Yeah, you can be ticketed, and it's just so dangerous even for spectators. Like, you never know, these cars can run wild, the fireworks, all of that, as you mentioned. Have you ever come across one of those takeovers? I know they happen more often than we like to think here in Atlanta.
I haven't come across one personally. I have covered traffic during one. In fact, a story, I was doing overnight traffic at my previous traffic gig, and I heard of a big gathering that was on Moreland Avenue, Moreland Avenue is a big 3 lanes in each direction road south of I-20, near I-285 in South DeKalb. And as they were leaving their takeover event, they hit 285, and because they were racing and just in close quarters, there was actually a big crash on, I think it was a Sunday night, I think it was 285 westbound, right after Moreland Avenue, right where they entered the interstate, just to show how dangerous it is, not for the people only participating or the people watching that are not in cars, but also other motorists. You got to be courteous to them, not only leave their road open, but not put them in danger.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Doug, I know you're a proponent of safe racing. So are there legal outlets out there if you want to race and drift in Georgia? What do some of those legal opportunities look like?
For sure, and this is not right in downtown Atlanta, unfortunately, and a lot of the people involved in this are probably living closer to in town, but 2 places that I've been before and actually called races, okay? Road Atlanta, which has what's called SCCA amateur or semi-pro racing, and then also across the street at the former Lanier Raceway that's now a big drifting park. You can pay as low as $10 at Lanier to go and drift your car to your little heart's desire, and then pay even more money as you amp up and go through the classes. So there are ways to do that. There are also great high-speed karting tracks. And this does cost a lot of money, the Porsche driving experience by the airport. And I know there's been talk over time of trying to do sanctioned street racing events inside maybe vacant parking lots and such, but I don't know of one of those just yet.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the case. Obviously, like I said, best to be safe. Doug, thank you so much. Anything else you want to share with us? I know you are all things traffic, all things, when it comes to the roads. Yeah. Anything else?
Well, for sure, just that the 10th Street closures are going into place right now between Juniper and Piedmont. Please be courteous around these sewer workers. They're going to be out for a couple of weeks. One of them told me a lot of drivers get really angry around them, and that's just unwarranted.
Yeah, it can be a busy area there. Doug, on the roads for us every morning here on 11Alive. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon. Thank you. And you can catch Doug's Gridlock Guy column every week on 11alive.com. And again, as I said, every morning on 11Alive News. We've got much more The Take for you coming up. We'll be right back. The Fed is about to drop its next move, and it could shake your wallet. CNN's Maribel Hebert joins us this morning now from the NASDAQ market up in New York. So good morning, Maribel. What are we expecting to learn from the Fed chair later today?
Hey, good morning, Jonathan. We're expecting an interest rate cut, the first since December. It will come at the close of the central bank's 2-day policy meeting. Mounting signs of labor market weakness are a key reason the Fed is expected to lower borrowing costs for the first time in 9 months. There's also the growing belief among the central bankers that tariff inflation may be short-lived. Now, this comes after the Senate confirmed Stephen Miron, Trump's top economic advisor, to fill a vacated seat on the Fed's Board of Governors. The term expires at the end of January, but it could be extended after being sworn in on Tuesday. Miron can cast a vote at the policy meeting today. Jonathan, now the markets have sort of baked that rate cut in. The question is, how many more?
All right. Well, Maribel, if your student loans are still hanging around, your credit score, we're learning, the next move might surprise you.
That's right. And for many, it may be an unpleasant surprise. American credit scores are falling at the fastest rate since the Great Recession more than 15 years ago. FICO says the average score dropped by 2 points this year. The analytics company found borrowers are behind on credit cards, car payments, and other loans. For young people, it's a 1-2 punch of high student debt and low entry-level hiring. Gen Z saw the biggest drop, with credit scores losing an average of 3 points. Real quick, Jonathan, that Gucci bag you thought was on sale is not a deal if it takes you 3 years to pay it off at a high interest on your credit card.
That's a good point, Maribel. Hey, let's talk Toyota. The automaker is now recalling certain display panels, and we're hearing it's not just cosmetic here.
Jonathan, it's about staying safe behind the wheel. The nearly 600,000 Toyota and Lexus vehicles are being recalled due to a potential safety risk involving the instrument panel display. Toyota said the panel could be blank when the vehicle starts and drivers could miss malfunction indicators. If that happens while driving, continuing to drive could risk or increase the risk of an accident or an injury during a crash. Now, specific model years for the cars haven't been released yet. Toyota said owners of vehicles impacted by the recall will be notified by mid-November.
All right,
Jonathan.
before you go, Maribel, I do want to ask you about this. That bottle of Sparkle from Costco, we understand it's being sent back before the bubbles even hit your lips.
Yes, Jonathan, Costco is recalling the sparkling wine because some unopened bottles could actually shatter without warning. Now, the recall covers Kirkland Signature Prosecco, and it was sold in multiple states between the end of April through August. Costco says not to open any of the affected bottles. Instead, this is what you need to do. You need to wrap the bottle in paper towels, put it in a plastic bag, and then actually throw it away. A lot of steps there. You can also take the recall letter to your local Costco warehouse for a full refund. You know, Jonathan, avoid a party foul. Be careful when you handle it.
Yeah, that's the goal. All right, Maribel Hebert, we always appreciate you joining us. Thanks so much. We have plenty more in store for you on this Wednesday morning. This is The Take. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The Peach State's Latino leaders are being recognized in a really big way. The Georgia Hispanic Chamber just unveiled its annual list of the state's 50 most influential Latinos. From business to public safety, these honorees are shaping our communities. And joining us this morning live to talk about it is Chamber President and CEO Veronica Maldonado Torres. We appreciate you joining us. This is a big recognition. It really does matter. So what do people often, you think, misunderstand, Veronica, about the size and diversity of our state's Latino population?
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite subjects, Latino leadership and our influence on the economy. And I would say, you know, we're job creators, we're innovators, we're advocates, we're bridge builders, we're in every sector of society. We are as diverse as the Latin American countries that we come from, but what keeps us really at the center is food, culture, music, and family. And so, yes, we just celebrated our 50 most influential Latinos in Georgia event at Truist Park. It was a beautiful reflection of, you know, stories of folks that are doing hard work, that are contributing to our communities, that have a heart to serve and to give back. With over 450 people present, we highlighted 8 folks inducted into our Hall of Fame, which means they have been consistent in their effort in delivering impact to our community, whether they're a restaurateur or in the nonprofit sector or in government positions. And that was amazing to hear some of their stories and their contributions and how they're creating jobs and making an impact. In addition to those, we did have the 50 most influential Latinos that range from throughout our state. And again, it was a wonderful time to share the positive storytelling around our influence and our impact.
Yeah.
You know, we represent about 1.2 million Latinos in the state of Georgia that call us home. I know my family's been here for over 40 years, and we make about 11% of the state's population. About 900,000 live in Metro Atlanta. We're young. We're vibrant, we're an entrepreneurial community, and we are a driving force to Georgia's economy, workforce, and consumer base.
I love that. And you also mentioned that the Latino community is growing, shaping the economy and the culture. So important here in Metro Atlanta. So you talk about influence. We were just looking at some of the video from your event at Truist Park. How do you go about selecting these honorees? Because I'm sure you have a lot of great people to choose from.
Absolutely. You know, this year we had over 600 submissions of folks that, that folks nominated to be considered for this, prestigious recognition. And let me tell you, there are so many unsung heroes out there, so many stories that we don't know about. We always encourage folks, if you didn't see someone that should be there, let us know at the Georgia Hispanic Chamber and make sure that you nominate them, that you submit their information. But, we looked at a set of core criteria, their impact in their community, their engagement over a long-term period, the various sectors that they represent, and also the amount of time that they've been doing this work. What does that ripple effect really look like in those key sectors and areas? And do they have the core values and the ethics that, we want to elevate and demonstrate as values and principles of our community?
Yeah, and it's great, Veronica, that this is all happening, of course, at the start of Hispanic Heritage Month. Everyone's excited about the festivities and events coming up. I do want to give a quick shout out to our very own honoree. The list included our station general manager here, Christy Gonzalez. She was honored among those 50 most influential. We're so proud of her. So how do you see the list shaping some of the business and civic partnerships across Metro Atlanta and really beyond?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the list is concerned, of the 50 this year, I think we had about 25 or so new people that had not been recognized in our community before. And, we had different sectors, whether it was business, nonprofit, health and tech, entertainment, and other, also education. I think we had a very balanced group of folks in these different sectors. And as I mentioned, we know that there's some amazing unsung heroes that maybe we didn't get a chance to highlight, but that's why this happens year over year, and it's an opportunity and a call for each and every one of us to submit and nominate folks that we think should have their stories displayed. And really, at the end of the day, when I think about my kids, I have a 16-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter. And, the way that I operate, and I think that many of our leaders is, being those role models and those mirrors to this young Latino community that exists here, right? To be able to see someone, to be able to lead one of the largest chambers in the country, as a woman, Latina owned, coming from a background of small business and championing our communities and leaders, or seeing a doctor, really sharing impact or changing, how we do medicine. Or seeing a nonprofit leader who's really lifting up certain key areas that need resources and development and support, or soccer stars that then turn their next careers into development around athletics and getting our kids involved and staying out of trouble and giving them those core leadership skills that they need to be successful in this world.
Yeah, and I like how you talked about that, it being a young group here, because it's so important that even some of our younger people who are in school now see leaders who look like them doing great things. And so it's great to see them being recognized. Who are a couple of the other names on the list people might recognize, or some of the other people that got recognized this year, Veronica?
Well, I'll share out of our Hall of Fame inductees, we had about 8 of them. And one of them is Veronica Moreno. She is the CEO of Ole Mexican Foods. Her story is remarkable. Over 35 years ago, she decided to support her husband, who was going to work and preparing him homemade tortillas. And it was really a company birth out of the love of her husband and nourishing him on the job site. And today, that company is one of the largest Hispanic-owned businesses in the nation. You can find their tortillas and all of their products in, almost every major retail chain. And, I love that story because she talks about how with very little education, she was able to build this almost billion-dollar enterprise. And to also see the family be so active in this company and the work that they do day in and day out. So Veronica Moreno is an inspiring leader for all of us to really see that no matter your background, your education, or where you come from, if you have the will and the desire to succeed and you have an idea and you're serving a gap in the market that's needed, your dreams are possible, your business is possible. And she talked about, the resilience of overcoming adversity, the resilience of overcoming her own adversity about what she thought she was capable of, and then being able to shift that mindset to truly believing. And I say you have to have a crazy belief in anything that you do before anybody else will. But she's one of the amazing stories. Also, Maria Fundora. Who
hey Veronica, sorry to cut you off.
Restaurant.
We're running out of time, but you are amazing.
I can tell stories for days.
I love your passion. It's amazing. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month. We appreciate you, Veronica. Thanks so much. We've got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more on The Take. Before we go, my final take, can you believe we are just 99 days away from Christmas? In the spirit of Chesley, who starts his shopping in July, my take is now is the time to start your shopping. Look, I know we're still weeks away from Halloween, but that hasn't stopped many stores from promoting sales. December for me tends to be stressful with all the holiday parties and events and work. So yeah, I'm starting early. I did this last year. I feel like it takes a lot more stress out of things, and you can actually enjoy the holidays with your families. I know the economy is rough, but if you can, start early. Have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow on The Take.